Hey, Green Hills, it's Pastor Matt. I had a great time preaching through Daniel 4 and looking at that together with all of you. And we are doing these short videos just as a way to talk briefly about something that didn't quite make it into the sermon. There's so much great content when you study God's Word, and we had a big passage, and it just didn't all make it in, even after a almost 40-minute sermon. And I want to say that the thing that stood out to me that had we had a lot more time, we could have talked more about is in verse 27 of Daniel 4, when Daniel says to the king after he interprets the dream, kind of a warning to him. He says, "Hey, king, maybe this won't happen to you if you do two things." He says, if you do righteousness and if you show mercy to the poor and oppressed. Um, those two things stand out to me because in another place in the Old Testament, in Micah 6:8, we hear the prophet say, or God say through the prophet, that this is what the Lord requires of you. He requires you to do justice or act justly, to show mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And so in Daniel, it's interesting to me, in Daniel 4, when the issue is the king's humility, really his hubris and lack of humility, what Daniel says to him is, hey, you should act righteously or justly and show mercy to the poor, the oppressed. It's interesting to see those three things kind of show up in the same place: humility and justice and mercy. So it's interesting to think about how they correlate. Maybe if we are particularly prideful or lack humility and we have kind of this "I deserve it" attitude, we're not going to be particularly generous or particularly considerate of other people. And so I would encourage you to think about that this week. How does humility fuel justice? How does humility fuel mercy in our lives? So think about that. I hope you keep digging into Daniel. We're going to be in chapter 5 next week, and we're looking forward to that as well. Have a great week, Green Hills.